This show is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Without a healthy mind, being happy is hard. Visit betterhelp.com/kindafunny and see if online therapy is for you. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Kinda Funny Gamescast. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside the future class of video games, Blessing Adeoye Jr.
Greg, I really admire the LED lights you got in the background.
Oh, thank you. You know,
Yeah.
Jovi, just like we're always talking about. I even sent Tim Geddes a little slack there. Of course, Tim Geddes, your usual host of the Gamescast, bit in both eyes by a snake, fell down the stairs. Again, I'm sorry, Barrett. This snake is out to get all kind of funny.
PSA by one Matt Batson?
You know what? There's a great PSA from Matt Batson on Twitter. You can go see about this. But yes, Tim has been bitten in the eyes by snakes. And what's really screwed up is that he was with Andy, and Andy went over to help him.
Oh.
Andy bit in the both eyes, same snake. It's, there's one snake out there that just hates us, and it's all about it right now. But yeah, I did text him, or actually, I guess I texted Gia, who read him on his hospital deathbed, what colors do I put up behind me? And he took too long to respond, and I went and watched the video because I remembered I could do that, and I set my lights the exact same way.
Hell yeah. They say, because right now you have it as purple and blue, and they say that those are the Gamescast colors.
Pink and blue. This is pink. All right.
It's like the classic
it
kind
is
of funny
purple.
colors.
Purple is
The purple was before when I did the Avengers stream. I had
Yeah.
purple up.
Yeah, it was
Come on.
very different, Blessing. Come on. Keep
Come on,
on.
Blessing. Keep it
I'm just saying,
together.
Gamescast historically, as everybody knows, has always had purple as the main color. It's
I mean,
purple. and blue.
Tim did get back to me. Tim did get back to me, and I said, what colors do I need to make my background to be like you for Gamescast? Lol. He says, I do a mix of teal, purple, and dark pink.
Wow.
So I actually, Tim doesn't use commas. So teal, purple, and dark pink.
Teal purple.
Oh my God. How is it this off the rails 5 seconds into this show? One of our other hosts for the day, ladies and gentlemen, hails from the Kinda Funny Xcast. You know him. You love him. He's the master of hype. SnowBikeMike. Hello, SnowBikeMike.
Hey, thanks for having me on Gamescast, crew. I'm really excited to talk video games. I will say, along with the lights, Greg, you do look great, and the jacket looks really good, but you're missing one, hero behind you. I'm kind of missing the Black Panther statue behind you.
I thought even for Greg Miller, there comes a level of oversaturation. And the fact that I'm cold, so I'm wearing the Avengers jacket, I still have the cap shield behind me. I thought maybe the King of Wakanda was too much, and I pushed him out of frame. But he's still right there. Don't worry. He's on his farewell tour.
Is he yours now? Are they going to take it back?
They say they're going to take him back. They say they're going to take him back.
Jen is going to send him away.
Now, I need Lucy. Well, I'll introduce you for real in a second. But Lucy, I need your help more than anybody to say, hey, that's really great. That really ties I don't want to give the Black Panther back. You know what I mean? Like, I want him to stay. But yeah, Jen's all creeped out all the time.
Under false pretenses, just send me a picture because I haven't really seen the new space. Just be like, hey, Luce, what do you think of the den kind of coming together? And I'll be like, yo, that Black Panther statue has to stay. Ties the whole room together.
Yep, you nailed it. Okay, cool. I like that. Thank you for the help. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, that's my former roommate and my forever friend. That's GameSpot and Giant Bombs, Lucy James.
Hi.
Hey, Lucy, how are you?
Thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here. I miss you all.
I know. Well, thank you for staying up, right? You are, of course, in the UK. It is 11:28 p.m. there right now.
This is the Sopranos hour. Like I said when I chatted to you the other day. So don't worry. I'm just, this is just Sopranos time.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to divert your attention from Sopranos because this, of course, is the Kinda Funny Gamescast. Each and every week, we come together to talk about all the things we love and sometimes don't love about video games. If you love that, though, you can go to patreon.com/kindafunnygames to be part of the show with your questions, your comments, your concerns, and everything under the video game sun. Oof, I thought I wasn't going to nail it at all, Blessing. Then I thought I was really going to screw it up, and it was just a minor wobble, and I'll take it because,
You did good.
When do I ever host the Gamescast? I don't know what I'm doing. Of course, on patreon.com/kindafunnygames, you can write in to be part of the show. You can get the show ad-free. You can get the show with the exclusive post show we do each and every week. And of course, usually you could be watching the show live, but today we have too many embargoes for that, so we won't be doing that. That means you'll be getting it later on youtube.com/kindafunnygames. You can also get it on roosterteeth.com or podcast services around the globe. No matter where you get the Kinda Funny Gamescast, thank you for your love, your support. Please consider like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, and all that jazz. You could go the extra mile, of course, and be like our Patreon producers, Julian the Gluten-Free Gamer, James Hastings, Casey Andrew, Elliot, and Brian Ward. Of course, that puts us right into the thick of housekeeping. So let me tell you, of course, today we're going to be talking about 12 minutes, but that isn't the end of the conversation about this little game. If you want to get more about 12 minutes, tune into this Saturday's Xcast. That's right. SnowBikeMike show. The Xcast will be over there. It will be me. It will be Barrett. It will be Khalif Adams, and we'll all be talking about 12 minutes in the second half of the show, a spoiler cast. So if you haven't played it, you're waiting for the weekend, don't worry. You'll still get a good Xcast conversation about games beforehand, but then we're going to go gloves off, spoilers. This episode of Kind of Funny Gamescast, when we talk about the review for 12 minutes, will in fact be spoiler free. So don't worry about that. If that wasn't enough for the show, maybe you're like, am I on the wrong Gamescast? Is the thumbnail wrong? No, we're going to review Ghost of Tsushima as well on this episode of the Gamescast. And if that wasn't enough, we have an interview with Jay Lynn from the Games and Online Harassment Hotline to talk about the Hotline's 1-year anniversary. We'll get to all of that, and I'll tell you about our sponsors. Oh, and I didn't copy them down. Dang it, hold on. Blessing, fill time, say something.
Man, Lucy, it's nice to have you back. I know you've been in Britain for the last few months. How's that going? How's the UK going?
UK's going fine. It's really nice to be back in a weird way, just because everything has changed and nothing has changed at all. Catching up with folks who I've missed, obviously staying with my family right now. Process to get back is taking a little longer than I expected. Tam and I are both kind of in the same boat there, but making it work.
You know who else is making it work? Our sponsor, Freshly. I'll tell you about them later. But for now, let's begin the show with talking about Ghost of Tsushima. I've been trying to beat it out of myself. Tsushima, not Tsushima. Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. That's right. We have it. Game provided by PlayStation. Of course, PlayStation sent us copies for review for this very purpose. So let's talk about Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut for the review. Of course, the original game came out on your PlayStation 4 July 17th, 2020. It has a Metacritic right now of 83, which I believe is criminally underrated and outrageous, but we don't have to worry about that thing. Everybody gets a second chance to atone for their mistakes with the Director's Cut dropping this Friday, the 20th. Let's go around the horn. Blessing, how much of Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut have you played?
I've played enough to have completed the mainline story and the DLC, and maybe probably like an hour past that as well. Like I've explored around, played some proper Tsushima outside of Iki Island just to get an idea of what the next gen version of this game actually feels like. But then I also have done a few of the side things over on Iki Island, and I have completed the main campaign. So that's run me about 3 to 4 hours.
Okay. SnowBikeMike, where are you with Ghost of Tsushima? Damn it, Director's Cut.
Greg, I am 11 hours in to my playthrough. Fun enough, this is my first time ever playing Ghost of Tsushima. I'm going to nail that one as well as I continue to practice that. But this is my first time ever playing the game, so I'm happy to jump in with the Director's Cut. And I think that's a conversation we should have later on about Director's Cuts and optimization patches.
Oh, sure.
But it pulled me in, and you asked me to join the Gamescast. I didn't know where Iki Island would start, so I just blazed a trail right on through Act 1 into Iki Island, completed through the main objectives on that one, and I've been having a ton of fun. I look forward to talking about it.
But what's more important is that yesterday I asked you to come on the Gamescast. Since yesterday afternoon, you've played 11 hours of Ghost of Tsushima?
I started at 5 p.m., I believe, and I had a piece of ash as well in my eyeball, so it hurt really bad. But I went through until
Tahoe's on fire.
Yeah, exactly. It's on fire right now. You never know. But I went through all the way till about 3 a.m. And I think that's a testament to this game. It really captured me because a lot of you guys know you spend a lot of time with me. I am known for more of the online multiplayer games as a service, play with your friends and hang out in that kind of game space. So it takes a lot to capture me in a single player game. And this one really grabbed a hold of me, and I'm really pleased about what I experienced, which is
Mike,
cool.
wait till I tell you about Legends, man. We're about to get lost.
Myself, I am further than I guess anybody, where I've beaten the storyline 2, which is about going after the eagle, which will, again, we're not going to spoil things. I might bring up something very in the beginning, like literally the first cutscene you'd get in that the Iki Island expansion, and then now I've just been running around Iki doing everything. I have I would say I would get really granular with it and probably be like, I have 90%, 95% of the island fog of war exposed. I've been going through doing all the question marks, but there's still a corner over here that I know has at least one Mongol base for me to go into, clear out that way. And I would say when I slacked about beating the Eagle story, that was I said 3 hours. It's kind of somewhere in there in terms of that story content. That was golden pathing it, like, because we got our review code on Monday, and of course then we're recording this on a Wednesday for the Thursday morning embargo. It's been very fast, let alone your regular day-to-day work. And so after that, I was like, okay, cool. Now I'll knock out the bunch of the island. And I still have a bunch of question marks on it. I still have a bunch of stuff to do. It is more Ghost of Tsushima, which is good or bad, but we'll talk about that in a second. Now, here's where you enter the picture, Lucy. I know you've played a bunch of 12 minutes. You're ready to talk to us about that. Have you touched Director's Cut yet?
Don't have it. Don't have
really.
it. But I did platinum base game.
Yeah.
And I played a bunch of Legends. So
Excellent.
I am here
Cool.
as I'm the audience in this. I've got the questions for you. I'm gonna follow up on points that you make and ask questions.
That's why I love having you here, because obviously when we were living together, housing together, it was that thing of I remember you platinum. I remember you coming out and us trading stories for where we were and what was going on with it. And
trading spring locations.
Oh god, yeah, you know what I mean. Like just so many things like that. Is this one of the ones I think I borrowed the GameSpot guide from when it was in progress?
Yeah.
Where I asked you, can you please send me this? I need help platinuming it. Yeah. So this is, of course, the full game of Ghost of Tsushima that came out, of course, like I said, in 2020. Now you get this Iki Island expansion, which is this big new area. Like we said, 3 hours of story there in terms of golden pathing it, but then a whole bunch of other stuff to go through. Of course, it comes with Legends. You get there's new skill tree stuff I don't want to get into too much. There's new charm stuff. There's more stuff to go through and do there. And then, of course, in September, they're launching on top of that Rivals mode for Legends. Blessing, I know you're stoked for this one. New trophies, new cosmetics. This is, of course, another way for you to go out and play with each other in Legends mode. But we'll talk about that for now because that's not actually happening right now. Well, we've been playing this on PS5. We've been playing the single player stuff. Reading, of course, from exactly what they wrote way back in the day. PS5 version of Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut means dynamic 4K resolution targeting 60 frames per second, DualSense wireless controller haptic feedback and adaptive trigger resistance, 3D audio with stereo headphones, lip sync for Japanese voiceovers, the ability to transfer your PS4 save progress over to PS5, and then, of course, the upgrade if you're playing on PS4 or just want to upgrade your PS4 copy is $20. Then if you want to go that extra mile for the PS5 bells and whistles I just talked about, $10. Got all that out. Got it all said. Lucy, as somebody who hasn't played it, what is your first question? As a big fan, now there's more content for it. There's just a new version of it.
I mean, let's start with PS5 upgrades. I want to know about haptic feedback, if that feels good, how it looks, how it runs. Because I know there was a patch when PS5 just came out, which is kind of like more of an optimization patch to make it. Was that 60? Was that the 60 frames?
Yeah, it was doing 60 frames a second. It was running better. It was looking better or whatever. But yeah, this is the one that's optimized or it's built for the PS5. I almost tweeted, or I didn't tweet it almost. I thought about it since we're under embargo. But it is that moment of after all the shit I talked about every example being like, yo, when you draw back your bow, you'll feel it in the triggers. And I was like so sick of hearing that.
Yeah,
it does feel fucking awesome in this game. Blessing, am I wrong?
I love it. I love it so much. That's those are some of the first things I noticed upon booting up the game. One, just how good this game looks, and this game has always looked good. I think Ghost of Tsushima, we don't talk about the art direction and art style enough. We talk all about the graphics and how beautiful the open world looks, but that is enhanced so much by how good the art direction is. When we talk about the trees, we talk about the flora, we talk about just the amount of colors that they throw on screen, and I think that also is enhanced when we get to Iki Island, because Iki Island it's somewhat similar as the main island of Tsushima, but I think there are some things here and there that really separate it in terms of the actual colors and vibrancy you're getting on Iki Island that feels unique from Tsushima proper. But yeah, the DualSense stuff was also stuff that stuck out to me, because things as simple as getting on your horse and the gallops, and like when each of your horse's feet hit the ground, or hooves hit the ground, you feel that in the controller, right? And the rhythm of it comes through the controller too when you get the gallop, like if you feel it, and it feels really cool. But then the bow and arrow stuff as well, like it's the tired example we always give, and I think we always give it in relation to Horizon Zero Dawn or Horizon Forbidden West, the next Horizon game. But Ghost of Tsushima really does, it might be the first party PlayStation game that really is you're using a bow and arrow all the time in this game, and this game really does show off what that's like in the DualSense, and so I love that stuff so much as well.
Well,
Mike, you of course are on the record as being a crazy person and making fun of the DualSense all the time. I believe you said it's a terrible controller at one point.
Lucy James, I love to dunk on the DualSense. A lot of people know that about me. I've said a lot of bad things about it, but I'm actually going to piggyback off of Blessing and Greg here. I'm going to say some really positive stuff about that, because Blessing touched on the look, right? And I want to touch on the music, the sounds, and how that ties in to the rumble of the controller. And I think that added so much to the gameplay for me and the experience, the immersion. I was blown away sometimes of watching this beautiful cutscene and hearing different sounds and that reflecting into the rumble of the controller and just kind of getting lost in it to the point where I said, wow, this is a really cool experience. I'm loving this. I will say, counter to those guys, I did not notice anything on the adaptive triggers. I think they call that, right?
Sure.
With the bow and arrow. I did not feel any difference in that. I felt it more with Maneater when I battled that trigger, trying to chomp on small seals and marine life. But in this one, I didn't really feel that. I felt more the rumble. That was more impactful to me and how they tied that in to the music and the moments. And that was really something special there to feed off of.
Please.
Sorry, I was gonna say, I will say a place where I felt it in terms of the adaptive triggers, even more so than the bow and arrow, where I don't know if this is a new thing for Iki Island or if I just didn't think about it while doing it in the main game, but there are instances where you are using a grappling hook to bring down structures, and so you'll press L2 to attach your hook, and then I think R2 to
it's R2 to grab it, L2 to pull it.
L2 to pull it, and the way that it might have been in the original game, it might feel new because of the adaptive triggers. I can't tell, but
I think it was in the original, but I could be wrong. But I remember when I did it the first time in this game, I screwed it up, and I'm like, oh, I've screwed this up before.
Okay, yeah. When you hook it in this one, there is like a little like let go in the R2 that I noticed that doesn't change the mechanic, doesn't grant anything super crazy, but does add that little bit of texture to the feel of the action you're doing. That I took notice of it and I was like, damn, that's really cool. And it's in that stuff where even more so the adaptive trigger stuff stood out, even more so than just the bow and arrows alone.
So, Luce, you're saying how you platinumed it. And I know how much you enjoyed it then. I know how much I enjoyed it then. I know how much Blessing enjoyed it. And we'll get to Legends, which is a different conversation later. And I'm sure we're going to talk about that for weeks, if not months now on PS I Love You. But for Mike, talk to me about it. You didn't play this at launch, so this is your first experience into it. Were the 11 hours a chore, or were you immediately locked in?
I think, Greg, I had the moments that any gamer does where you feel that frustration probably at about hour 3 or 4 of, man, am I doing the same repetition, the same things of go here, go take over that outpost. Oh man, you're lost on the map. Go click on the wind and follow that. And there's some moments there, but I got to say, I think from the story and how it felt a little more intimate as opposed to like an Assassin's Creed, a game that I've been playing since 2007, right? I'm kind of burnt out on that franchise and I was looking for something different. And I'm surprised that this game really captured me. And I think it comes down to the story and the characters, right? It feels right from the jump, something different, something new to me. And it felt really gritty and intense, right? As you start off on that invasion on the beach, and then all of a sudden the whole island is in ruin, and it's now up to me to go figure out what's next, right? And I felt that from the graphics, like Blessing brought up, to the controls, and the music was something that captured me the whole entire time. And it was really wild. I haven't been this captured in a game in a long, long time on a single player open world RPG type game. And right off the jump, I was like, oh man, am I really going to go from point A to point B? Do I have to be on the horse again? I have horror stories from Roach to Red Dead Redemption 2. I can't do this again, right? And all of a sudden, I got to pick my horse. I named it, right? And I started to build this connection. And then this beautiful world just captured me. And all of a sudden, 5 hours went by, 10 hours went by, and I didn't want to stop. And it was so cool to see the different areas and to feel like I was in different spots. And when you go to Iki Island, which we'll talk about in a little bit, felt totally different from what I experienced in Act number 1, right? And then as well, man, the duels were so cool, right? I didn't see the duels coming until, oh, it's time, right? And all of a sudden, well, we'll talk about that. That's the showdown, right? The showdown, I don't know. I could give or take the showdown.
Oh, get out of here,
Here's
Mike.
the deal. Because I thought from what I saw way back in the day was if I showed you down and I killed you, all the people ran away and I like won, right? That doesn't turn out to be. I just keep fighting people. So it's almost pointless to me.
For the record, as you power and level up, it will get there. Where you can't have the thing where you can terrify other people, so you go through and you maul them with like ghost mode or whatever, and they'll drop and scatter and run. It's the idea is as your legend builds, they know, oh my god, this is the ghost of Tsushima. I'm gonna be terrified.
This is the guy.
But what I mean is
the guy.
The cool duels where you fight one-on-one and you're in that cool battle arena circle and you can feel it, right? And it starts off from the training mode, right? As Jin is training with his uncle, and there's that beautiful scene of all the red leaves around you, and you're kicking them up, as you go through. And I don't want to, I'll tease for the Iki Island stuff, but like that's a beautiful duel, right? And then there's one where I'm fighting the Straw Hats in act number 2. And I thought me and the Straw Hats were going to be cool, Lucy James. We're not cool anymore, right? And I really liked that. And I don't know, something captured me about this game where the 11 hours flew by. And now I want more, which is really hard for me to say because I never play single player games. I kind of lost on that. So I want more. And, you know, Blessing, this is for you and all the anime lovers out there. This is the type of game I play this. And I'm like, man, I wish they would turn this in to Samurai Champloo, right? Not the super over the top anime look, but give me this story. Give me the RZA on the soundtrack. Give me those characters. And man,
God,
oh man, would I have
DLC.
some fun. But yeah, Greg, I'm blown away from my first experience. I'm really glad that I tried it. And I dove into it. I had a blast.
When I started it up, I had that, and stick with me because this will sound more negative than I imply it to be, negative to Horizon. I had that moment of like, oh no, is this going to be like when Horizon dropped their DLC? Because my memory of Horizon's DLC was we'd been waiting, got it, came home, started it, and guess what? It's just added on quests and stuff. And it was very much like, cool, do you remember how to play? We don't fucking care. You're going to get kicked around. You're going to feel like, oh man, all the systems, they weren't natural to me. And I remember it taking me a while to get back up to speed with it. And so when I started Tsushima, immediately ran to Iki Island. I knew we were on a deadline. I wanted to get through that and be able to talk specifically about the new stuff. And so ran in there, immediately got whooped on, which turned out to be part of the story, but I didn't know. And so I got knocked down immediately and texted Goldfarb, of course, kind of funny friend and family at this point, but, former Podcast Beyond co-host, now over at Sucker Punch. I'm like, oh man, I just got my head kicked in. He's like, it's going to all come back to you. It's all going to come back to you. Don't worry about it. And I was shocked that by an hour in, it had all come back to me. And it was second nature of, following the wind, using the touchpad, jumping on my horse, getting back into battle. I was so afraid of coming back in and having the standoffs that I was just going to get destroyed every time. Coming back in that I wouldn't remember how to assassinate well, all these different things to where I would feel like, Rocky at Rocky 4 or whatever, or something, trying to get into shape, having to have a montage. And it happens so quickly. And I think the story of Iki Island is so interesting and leads you into it so well. I'm so surprised here as we review it, how fond I am of it and how much fun I had with it. And to compare it again to Horizon's DLC, I struggle right now to tell you what Horizon's DLC was about. Right? Like I remember it was cold, it was frozen, like, you know what I mean? I think that. Yeah, it was Frozen Wilds, and it was this, that. But I don't remember connecting with any characters. I don't remember what the narrative was or what the extension was. Whereas, again, to Mike's point of how grounded and boots on the ground we are with Jin, like I think his story resonates so well. And so jumping in here and the new cast of characters, the Eagle, your new Mongol leader enemy, and the stuff Jin's wrestling with, which again we won't spoil, don't worry, I think is so well done that I feel like. I guess what's bizarre is that I finished Ghost of Tsushima. I had platinum Ghost of Tsushima, and I remember being on the shows being like, man, I want more. Like, I wish there was just more to do. Now you jump here, and I finished the Eagle storyline, and I thought when I did it, because obviously this is all happening at once in real time, right? I beat it, and then Wakanda dropped for Avengers that day, and I was like, I'm going to come back from lunch, and I'm going to go right to Wakanda. Instead, I was like, well, I got to do the Gamescast, so I might as well keep doing question marks. I might as well keep spending time. And now I'm here talking to you all about it. And tonight it's like, well, I want to level up Black Panther, but I really want to go clear out all this stuff.
Turning into Fran?
Well, it's games as a service, Barry, got to be a part of it. But like, this is the thing that not only satiated me in terms of the moment, but I'm still so hungry for what they did, because what they have here is so good. The tweet I sent Barrett for this Gamescast when I wanted to go up, right, is Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut is a wonderful reminder of how special this game is. And that was the thing, is I played through this, like, just cutting people down and scaling things around and following the birds and seeing all the new shrines and stuff. Like, it is such a gorgeous, fun to play game. Blessing Adeoye Jr.
Yeah, I 1000% agree with you. Like, coming back into it, I had the exact same experience where it's been months and months and months since I've actually touched this game, and getting into combat. It's that thing where I've played action games between this game and the last game. I think I've probably played a game where I've ridden a horse probably since I played this game last. And so trying to get into the flow of it, I was like, oh yeah, okay, how do I do this? How do I do that? I think the thing that was the most difficult was actually figuring out combat, because man, I forgot how many combat mechanics and features that it has that you have in this game, right? You not only have bows and arrows and different kinds of bows and arrows and different kinds of arrows, or different kinds of bows and different kinds of arrows. But then you also have your different throwable items, from the kunai to the sticky bombs and all the stuff that you unlock there. And you also have the stances. Like, getting back into the flow of all of that was a thing that took me quite a few battles to get into. And I got into that same exact place where I am fighting against Mongols, and I'm like, man, I'm getting my ass handed to me, and I die, and I'm like, what the fuck, man? Why is this so hard? And then you realize that, oh shit, no, you're supposed to die here, because that then leads into the next thing. And from then on, the Eek Island DLC from then on, I thought was just a fun like ease back into the game in a way that I wasn't expecting it to be. Because Ghost of Tsushima, especially when I compare it to so many other open world games, I would say it's such an easy open world to get into. Like, mechanically, it's not doing anything too crazy outside of the combat, giving you a lot to deal with. The world, for me, the thing that I love so much about it is, one, how beautiful it looks and how kind of serene it is and how relaxing it is to just explore and ride through. That, alongside the fact that it is very straightforward. You have your forget the exact words for them, but like the fox shrines or the fox dens, I think that's what they're actually called.
Yeah.
They can discover, and they're you might come across a bird that'll fly you there, or you might come across a rabbit or some shit that'll guide you to a random discoverable thing. That stuff I forgot all about. But then also just the ways in which this open world feels like it's learned from games like The Witcher or Breath of the Wild, where it very much is about the discovery aspect of it. That's something that I've missed so much, and it's so easy in like how it allows you to discover that stuff. I had so much fun with that. And the one thing that surprised me from this DLC was how short the main Iki Island campaign is. And we've had our discussions talking about what our predictions were for what the DLC was going to be, how long the DLC was going to be. I think there are rumors here and there of like, oh, it might be 15 hours, but we really didn't have much to go on aside from the PlayStation blogs write-ups of what the premises of the DLC. And by the time I finished the 3-hour mainline campaign, I was like, oh shit, that was quick. But once I finished that, looked at the map and looked at how much was left in terms of just the pure exploration, and that actually got me really excited, because I realized that the DLC campaign, the I think they call it the Tales of Iki or Tales from Iki.
Tale of Iki, yeah.
The Tale of Iki. That I think was, for the most part, fine to good. Like, I didn't fall in love with that story. I did like meeting the characters, but there was nothing there that I felt like wasn't in the main campaign, or at least stood out as much from anything that was in the main campaign. But the island of Iki, exploring it, doing some of the new activities they have there, and just like hanging out and having fun, I thought was way more of an enticing prospect than like actually doing the main campaign of Iki.
See, what I think is interesting about it is, I do think that the main campaign stood out here, and not head and shoulders above it, right? Let me bring in a question here. Over here, Connor says, hello there, Gamescast crew. How does the original, and he wrote into patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, just like you could. How does the story in Iki Island expansion compare to the story in the main game? With it being shorter, do you feel like you're missing out, or does the length work in its favor? Thanks for the insight. What I appreciate about this, again, is I sit here and talk about how special Ghost of Tsushima is, and I think 2020, a banger year for games, right? How it did get overlooked a lot of times, where it was this thing, but Last of Us Part 2 was there, right? So that kind of stole all the PlayStation thunder on so many levels. To sit there and play this and be like, oh yeah, I forgot how good this was and how great it looks and how much fun it was. And then also the fact that I sit there and close my eyes and I'm like, oh, like I'm talking about how I don't remember Horizon's DLC, right? And even when we talked about Horizon before, like the intricacies of what was going on, I'm like, ooh, I start getting hazy. Like I remember it, but and I'm not going to say anything now, but I remember it, but not like names. But to sit here and be like, oh yeah, Ghost, and be like, oh man, and like Jin and his uncle, oh yeah, and then the Mongol leader, and then the battle of chasing him across the bridge, and I remember all of that so well. I remember that final duel so well. To then jump in here, I was like, all right, cool. How are they going to set this quest line up and make it different and interesting, I guess, and not feel like more of the same? Because this is that. It's more of the same. If you had if you didn't like Ghost's combat, well, I guess now they have lock on, which I didn't use.
I couldn't even figure out how to put it on. I didn't
see it at all.
It's over in the options for sure. I've seen it when I was looking for something else in there. Yeah, controls, and then what? I have it open over here. But you're right, now I don't find it. I looked
through controls and I couldn't find it. So I don't know if maybe it's
gameplay?
An update thing, or maybe I'm just
gameplay target lock. There it is.
It's in gameplay. Gotcha.
Gameplay target lock. Press up to toggle. When active, use R to switch targets. And then there's swap on defeat. When current target is defeated, you will lock onto the next available target. Didn't do it, didn't use it. I was not somebody who had a problem with the targeting before. I kind of liked that free flow of whoever's in front of me, I'm going to be able to attack or whatever. Anyways, though, how do you make this story not just feel like whatever, that it's, offshoot of something side? Because there were those side quests, right? There were the Tales of Tsushima and the other one. Like, I think the Eagle is an interesting enough character. And again, I go back and forth on this because I don't want to ruin anything for anybody playing it. And I guess it's not that. The Eagle does something in the beginning when you meet her that then makes it different. That island feels different in a way that the main island of Tsushima doesn't. And I liked that. It did shake it up of like, oh, okay, cool. Like, obviously these are the same mechanics, but what's going on exactly? What can I trust as I play through is a different kind of thing. I like that.
That is something I actually didn't like.
Really?
Because basically, I feel like in so many big AAA games, that is a trope. Like the way that it's hard to talk about without talking around.
I mean, here's the thing: we can honestly, I feel like we can say this because it's literally you're gonna start the game, you're gonna get a cutscene, and this starts. So it's not like the Iki stuff starts. This part. Lucy, do you care? No, you don't care if we tell you.
Okay, I mean, if it's the
there you are.
Cutscene, like. That's
cool.
Fine.
Yeah, because we're not giving you a story thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, if you want to tune out, this is your chance to tune out for like, a minute probably while we give this portion of it, and then we'll try not to come back to it. But she poisons Jin. So you have this very, very similar to Batman Arkham Asylum Scarecrow stuff. Where like she's in your head, but it's really your darkest thoughts talking. And so like, then you'll be running sometimes and it'll all turn purple and there's new things. But you didn't like that, Bless.
I didn't like it because I feel like I've seen this so many times before. Like you shout out Scarecrow, right? And I feel like there's so many other open world games, so many AAA action games that I can point to that have the same mechanic of as you're going, you get visions or everything changes and now you're fighting somebody are they there? Are they not there? It felt like it had been done before, and the one thing I did like about it was what it added visually, because one of the things talking about this game leading up to it was one of the things I would bring up would be about how I want to see them visually push this game in a way that Ghost of Tsushima Legends visually looked way different from Ghost of Tsushima proper. I wanted Iki Island to do a similar thing, and I think this was an avenue through which they could do that. But I think in action, in style, it worked. In action, I don't think it didn't work as well for me, just because it just felt like an easy way to go about trying to make this DLC feel fresh and different. That just didn't feel like a new use of that same mechanic.
That's fair. I can see that. Mike, did you have an opinion of it since you played through?
Yeah, that's interesting because I was coming hot off of playing Act Number 1, right? And this is my first experience, and it did feel tonally different, right? It felt mystical, it felt magical, and that was something. If you remember Act Number 1 and into Act Number 2, you don't really get that vibe right off the bat, right? When the main story plays out, you're doing it and it's pretty straightforward. But I felt like when I got introduced to the Eagle, I was like, oh, here's like this mystical, different vibe that I haven't seen in Act Number 1. I'm kind of interested in this. I like the idea where it's going. I totally understand where Blessing's coming from of like, hey, we've seen this, we've been there, done that, right?
Sure.
But in all honesty, like coming hot off Act Number 1 into that, I was like, oh, cool. Like, we're going to take a different approach to this game that I have not seen yet. And what I just played for the past, 9 hours, let's do it. And I really enjoyed that. I thought it was cool.
Luce, what other questions do you have? The commoner who doesn't have a copy.
The commoner, God. Well, I mean, I don't even have my PlayStation here if I did. So
outrageous.
That's the lie that I'm telling myself to make me feel okay.
There you go.
That's softening the blow.
I guess just how does it fit into the game sort of structure-wise? Is it the kind of thing where you just get the missions and you can leave them if you want to and piss about somewhere else? Or when you get to Iki Island, are you locked there until you finish that? And Mike, you're like just into Act 2, so I'm guessing it's not an end game thing at all. It's just kind of there in Act 2 that you can go and do?
Yeah, right, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer the beginning part or the second half of that is, it kicks off the moment you get into Act Number 2. So once you arrive in Act Number 2, you jump on your horse, you probably ride off into the distance for about 3 minutes, and then it will snap on in the menu, and you can click on it and go start off that mission. It does take you to, of course, Iki Island, a totally separate piece of it, but I never tried to venture off of the island while playing that, so I can't tell you if you're locked into it. It kind of felt like I was, but that was also my mind of like, I'm on an island and I'm here to do this. So I did. So. Yeah, I wasn't really planning on leaving, but it is nice to know once you complete it, you can go back, right? And I assume that you can go back because, like Blessing said, when you beat this golden, storyline, there's going to be a lot going on. That island is big, and it seems like it has a lot more to go explore and have some fun in. So I have to assume I should be able to jump back and forth, being where I at in the main story.
I don't remember. I never tried it either because we were golden pathing. I never did. I think you can. I want to say at some point they mentioned that, but I'm not sure. I've hit up another one of the reviewers I know that couldn't make this show to see if that's if they know if they tried it. But
see, I don't want to spoil anything loose. You know what I mean? Because like there's some vibes out there, and I'm like, I don't know. You know what I mean? I want to say I don't know on that. If you can go back, that's all. I'll tease you with that.
Well,
Mike,
that in itself is a great answer. So
can I ask you how it was for you in terms of difficulty? Because I'm sure me and Greg are both jumping into the DLC after we completed the game and leveled up all the way. Did you struggle going into it right after Act 1?
Absolutely slapped around, everybody. Just so you know, if you come hot off of Act number 1, you are going to get your teeth kicked in. And I mean, kicked in. I kept battling, and it got to the point where the game was asking me, do you want to kick it down to easy? And it became the game of I had to kite out a lot of enemies. I had to sit there and be real slow and methodical on a lot of things. So yeah, I would not encourage people to do what I just did, where you just mainline this and you get to this and jump right in, because it's going to be punishing. You can do it, and I can tell you from experience, it was very difficult and it hurt a lot. So I would slow it down and enjoy the roses while you're there and level up a little bit more.
That was, one of the things I was wondering too, because coming in, end game, I've platinumed, I have all my things. I'm out there, and like, when you go, they're like, hey, Iki's going to be tough. Are you sure you want to come over here and do it or whatever? When I went, does it warn you at the time you can't come back? No, I'm really wondering.
It does give you a warning, and I the implication I got was that you wouldn't be able to come back until you beat the story over in Iki.
That makes sense. The way the story plays out, it makes sense. You wouldn't be able to believe.
It wasn't a stern warning though, so I'm not positive.
Okay. Anyways, though, when you're going out, I lost the train of thought. What were I talking about?
How difficult is it?
I'm still hung up. Yeah, okay. When it said that, I was like, okay, cool. And I got in there, and then what I find is cool, Luce, like I had forgotten about this mechanic. When you're going, and you're facing off against people, you switch your stance to match their stance or whatever.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that until Mike, you mentioned it earlier, and I was like, oh god.
Yeah.
Rock.
The people over on Iki Island, they can switch too. So you'll be fighting, and they'll have the spear, and then they'll put it away, and they'll bring out the sword, and you have to switch on the fly too as you fight just one person, let alone this giant arsenal of people. But as I was doing it and getting back in the swing of it and learning how to play, I was like using my bombs and my knives, and I was like, I never did this the first time around. I remember always having those things maxed out in maybe like in a pinch or a giant fight. I would remember, oh wait, I have like batarangs. And this is where I'm like, oh, I am definitely out of shape, but the game has done such a great job of me bringing in this superpowered Jin Sakai that I'm not feeling like I'm totally out of shape.
I will say, I do like this lock on. I've been fighting in this Mongol territory, and I am digging this lock on. The only thing is that the lock on is mapped to up on the D-pad. Yeah. And that's kind of annoying. It should be R3, weird. But R3 is already mapped to crouch, and so they probably just had to figure out a solution. But tough. Yeah, up on the D-pad is not great for the lock on, but
there's a couple things like that, right? Where it's like I'd forgotten to, and I'm sure in the moment it didn't matter because you learn from scratch. But here, of like, all right, cool, I want to open the map, and I'd hit the touchpad, and then he'd bow. I'm like, oh god, right, it's not on the touchpad, it's over here on options. Like, oh, I forgot how to get it.
And like swiping up on the touchpad to do like the wind thing where you can track your objective. That was the thing I forgot totally about, and I always love that mechanic, but I kept forgetting that it was up on the touchpad because no other game does that.
I was swiping up all day. It was just nonstop. It was like me on Tinder, just swiping all day.
Are you paying for that thing, Mike? You don't get unlimited of those.
But I want to highlight the combat, right? I thought that was really, really special of how fast and fluid it did feel to switch the stances, right? And seeing the enemy types do that in Iki Island. And also a big shout out. This game actually makes it feel like the AIs that you're fighting next to do something. And I think that was something special that stood out to me, is like every time we got in a team fight with Straw Hats back in Act 1 to Iki Island and what was going on over there, it always felt like, man, this is cool. People are running up and we're having these big battles, and they feel like they're actually doing something, right? Instead of just that I'm kind of here, I'm just going to be disposable. They're like, oh, okay, good. You're taking on your person, hold them down for a little bit, and then maybe we'll team fight them, or maybe you'll kill them, maybe you'll die. But it felt really cool to see this kind of like army feel, right? Of other people were around me. I really loved that. And I don't think many other games truly capture that so well like this team did. I think they did an outstanding job with that.
And another thing I want to
you
pat him on the
mentioned earlier.
sorry, go ahead, please.
Oh god.
No, please, Luce,
I
go.
was gonna say, like you mentioned earlier, like it felt like it took the best parts of Assassin's Creed, and I think in the bigger scale battle, especially when you see more of those in Assassin's Creed, it feels like they've taken bits from open world games like Assassins, like Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor, and it's like an exercise in restraint, and that's one of the things I really, really loved about Ghost when I first played it, where it's like the map had loads of interesting things to go and find and do and collect and whatever, but it was manageable. The quest list, totally manageable. Trophies, manageable. Like even the HUD, the amount of gameplay, as catch-all as that term is, but it's like everything that it gave you was enough, and it kept growing, and you kept changing and like growing as a character and stuff. But it's like it all felt restrained. And I think in like modern AAA stuff where you have your Assassin's Creeds where they just throw literally everything in that game to try and hook you, like one more checkpoint, one more tower to climb, right? I was really impressed with the way that Ghost just reined it in.
Oh,
yeah.
I think.
Lucy, really quick. The checkpoint system and dying, how fast you turned around on this PS5, I was so impressed by that.
Yep.
The load times, you died, and
Fast
it was
travel.
also a brutal, awesome death animation. So shout out to that for dying. But how it kicked back on, I was really pleased with. And yeah, you're so right. Like I said at the beginning, geez, I've been playing Assassin's Creed since 2007. I am burnt out on these giant open world games. I've gotten to the point where I don't play them anymore. And I think that goes to like what you just said. And when I said with the story feeling a little more grounded and intimate, it felt like, oh man, this isn't this giant thing that I got to know everything about. We're going to go see these non-throwaway characters. Everything felt like it was purposely put there and was there to really continue to progress an awesome story. And that's what I love so much about it. And I think what captured me to keep playing so long in that, time frame that I did.
I will also say that Iki Island has me super excited for whatever Ghost of Tsushima 2 ends up being. Like playing through Iki Island and seeing how much they added, from Greg mentioning characters that'll switch stances to new characters that they introduced that feel core to the story, but the way in which they developed those and brought them into related them into Jin's own story, that was super well done and had me craving more. And then just like other things, like additional things to do in the open world, additional things to discover, the look of it. So much stuff here feels like it's teasing a, man, we're gonna go for it in Ghost of Tsushima 2. Like we have ideas, like we know ways in which we can build on this foundation, and so I really like Iki Island for that as well.
Yeah, that was one of the things, one of my criticisms of platinuming Ghost, the original, was the idea of like, I love doing it. I think it's a great trophy list and I wanted more in that game. But when I was onto, all right, cool, it's the 9th Onsen I'm trying to find, right? Is that how I say it? Osen? The 42nd Fox Den or whatever. I was like, oh, all right, like I know what this is. They break it up, I think, better here. Now, granted, it's a smaller area, but right, even for the dens for foxes have been replaced with like cats and deers and something else.
Deer shrines.
Yeah, there's monkeys, right? And it's like, okay, cool. There's like 3 of each of those, so that makes a total of 9. So there's enough to go over there and do, but it isn't like going over that hill. What's it gonna? Oh, it's another, fox. No, it is a cat. It is this. It is that. I felt like following the birds to whatever thing I was going to weren't as far out as before. Whereas in Ghost of Tsushima, I really felt like I was really trucking after some stuff for a while. This one seemed quicker about it. And I appreciate, again, no spoilers. And I don't know if anybody else is, how many you, did you, I know, Blessing, you've just started in on the open world stuff of Iki, right?
Yep.
Mike, did you do a lot of it or just some of it or none of it?
No, some of it, very little of it. There's so much going on that I was still trying to wrap my head around.
This is going to sound very empty, but like there are question marks on the map that are shrines that are Easter eggs. Did you start running into those?
Nope.
Those are cool. And I'm excited for everybody to get the game and start finding those, and I'll leave it at that. But like they've done a lot of making exploration in this game. I mean, it already was super fun, right? But it was also, all right, cool, I know what I'm going to get. And the fact that I'm still here and it's still like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to get, especially those Easter eggs. I don't know what I'm going to run into when I find one of those, what it's actually going to be. It's pretty neat. So I have a question here from Drippy Drapes, disgusting, on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, who writes in and says, as a big fan of Ghost of Tsushima, are the PS5 upgrades enough to make you want to replay the game? Blessing.
No, but I am planning to play a lot of Legends. I think for me that is where I get my Ghost of Tsushima fix when I just want to get in and just experience the game. Legends is the perfect thing for me because one, I just love the gear loot grind, and then also gives me a chance to hang out with friends, and then also bring friends who are new to Legends through the game. And for me, that's that's kind of my excuse to get in there and experience this PS5 version. But if you're not into Legends and you really dig the grind of Ghost of Tsushima, I think it would be a good excuse for you or whoever who just wants to get back into the game. Because again, upon booting this thing up for the first time, I was like, God damn, this game looks so good. It is incredible how I mentioned the art direction before, but yeah, graphically as well. 4K 60 FPS. It looks so crisp and so good. And so I would say if you are curious on jumping back into the game or replaying the game for those reasons, then I think those reasons are there for you. Like, you will have a good time.
Building on top of that, for someone who...
Well, I want to double down on that, though. Okay. Sorry, and I want to come to you. Because my answer for this is I'm very similar to Blessing, where no, I'm not a game replayer, especially a game I've platinumed, right? So the fact that, like, the platinum, it's an instant pop, and also shout out to them for making saves so easy, right? We were doing Avengers today, and I was like, oh, just get it. And Mike's like, well, I don't have my save. I'm like, oh, right, you do have to upload from PS4 to do the thing. Whereas this one, if it's in the cloud or whatever, it's already done. You just pull it down and you're all set to go. And so getting in there is the insta plat. But then when I went into the trophies and that there is a New Game Plus trophy for beating it again, I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to 100% this one again. Like, I'm not have to worry about that. But it was the idea of having personally played through Platinum Ghost, then fallen off. Then when Legends came, it had been enough time where I wasn't like super like, oh man, Ghost, jump back in, played a bit of Legends, but fell off of it and come back. Now I'm primed. Like, I'm ready to finish these trophies and start working on Legend stuff with you, Bless. Like, go back and get the trophies and go to the raid, which I never made it to, and all that jazz. Like, I'm stoked to play more. So it's PS5. The PS5 upgrades are there. Let alone the fact that I am usually, when we get these things, the 60 frames per second guy. Like, give me the best performance, right, over resolution. This one I started in resolution by default, and I couldn't leave. I tried at one point to leave, and I turned it back to resolution. I'm like, this is just gorgeous.
I might turn it back.
It's gorgeous.
Because I had that thing when I first booted up. It started in resolution. I was like, damn, this looks good. And I switched it to performance because that's what I always do.
Yeah.
And part of me was like, should I switch this back? But another part of me was like, no, I fight the good fight, performance for every single game.
Yes.
But hearing that you like it better, I might switch it back for the time being just to see if it grows on me, because it did look really good when I started off.
I mean, the game always looked beautiful, but like, it's so goddamn beautiful this time around as you run, and his Jin's cape will blow and you're running through the fields, and just so good. And Bear, I'm sorry, what was your follow-up to that question before?
Yeah, to build off of the viewer question from Drippy Drapes is, for someone who wasn't as enamored by the original release of Ghost of Tsushima as really the rest of this crew here, do you think this director's cut is something worth people trying? Because yeah, I thought Ghost of Tsushima was like, it was cool, it was all right, it just wasn't hitting me at the time, really.
Sure.
There were things like the lack of a lock-on that was really, my brain just couldn't figure out how to like vibe with what the controls for the original fights were and stuff like that. With y'all talking about like how like the Iki Island expansion is like, you're getting more of what the base game was, but not something as lackluster as maybe the Horizon DLC from a couple of years ago. Yeah, like, what are y'all's thoughts on this? Because like, it's one of those things where like I might want to dip my toes back in, but like I also feel like I'm having a million games thrown at me over the next month, and I don't know if I don't know if like I want to dedicate that time. So I'm really interested.
I'd say no. If you didn't like Ghost of Tsushima the first time around, this is the same game with quality of life improvements, but all in all, nothing here is life changing. Like, they're not changing the flow of the game. They do add the lock on, and like, if that was your breaking point, then maybe jump in and see if the lock on fixes that for you. But even with playing through the lock on right now, I like the lock on. Seems like it works pretty well, but it being up on the D-pad is already like, ooh, I don't know if I'm going to use this lock on if it's up on the D-pad every time to activate it and turn it off, because I don't want my lock on all the time. And so that's a thing. That said, I don't. It depends on the reasons you didn't like the game the first time around, but I can't imagine anything here being the game changer in terms of making this a new experience.
Gotcha. I might try like the opening hours again and see how it vibes, see if it clicks this time around.
Yeah. I'm right there with Plus. I think that's the right answer. Whereas I think if you didn't like Ghost, this is more of Ghost, which I love and I'm so excited to get. And I can't wait to play Legends and try the new stuff out. But yeah, I think it's fantastic. Seems like everybody does too.
Yeah, I loved it. I'm impressed with the 4K targeting 60, especially over on the Xbox side. We always talk about optimization over on that side. And, me, Gary, and Paris were kind of snobs. If it's not optimized, we kind of give it the face, right? And it's fun to now kind of take a look at the landscape of the differences, right? Of the optimization patches over on Xbox with Microsoft, and now what we're seeing with these director cuts, right? And what this is going to look like. And does that draw you in as opposed to a free optimization patch of an older game? Does that make you get over here and play it? Does the word director's cut with essentially the optimization, maybe add-ons, draw you in, right? And I think that would be a fun Gamescast topic you guys should talk about later on, because there's a lot of moments where a lot of Xbox games get optimized and I don't want to go back and replay them or try them if I never have. And I wonder if the director's cut draws me in to maybe say, you know what, maybe I will try that over something like this. So it's a fun conversation.
We'll see what happens Friday when everybody can pick up Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. It gets our seal of approval. But remember, of course, a game provided by PlayStation. They sent the game for review. Don't attack us, FTC. You back off. All right? Don't worry about it. We still have to review 12 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. But before then, how about we take a little bit of an intermission? First, we're going to tell you about who our sponsors are. And then we're going to have Jalen on from the Games and Online Harassment Hotline to talk about the hotline's 1-year anniversary. This podcast is brought to you by Freshly. Dinner time can be chaotic, but with Freshly, it's easy. Their chefs take care of your meals a few nights a week and take the pressure off of you. You might have heard me talk about it in the past few months because guess what? I bought it for my dad. I signed my dad up for his birthday. Maybe it was Father's Day. I don't recall, but I never stopped. And he gets a Freshly box every week with all the dinners he could possibly need in it. Ordering is easy. Visit Freshly.com and choose from over 30 delicious, satisfying, better-for-you meals like steak peppercorn, sausage baked penne, or their chicken pesto bowl. Freshly can fit your lifestyle with a variety of plans and meals to pick from that work for your dietary needs, preferences, tastes, and family size. The best thing about my dad is he loves it all. Right now, Freshly is offering our listeners $40 off your first 2 orders when you go to freshly.com/kinda. Stop stressing about dinner. Go to freshly.com/kinda for $40 off your first 2 orders. That's freshly.com/kinda for $40 off your first 2 orders. Be like Greg's dad. Our next sponsor is ExpressVPN. Using the internet without ExpressVPN is like walking your dog in public without securing them on a leash. That sounds dangerous. Most of the time, you'll probably be fine, but what if one day your dog wanders a bit too far and gets dog-napped by someone? Maybe me. Why does everyone need a VPN? Well, ladies and gentlemen, every time you connect to an unencrypted network, guess what? Something like a hotel, a cafe, an airport, your grandmother's, your online data isn't secured. Any hacker on the same network can gain access and steal your personal data. That's right, don't trust grandma. So it's time to use ExpressVPN. Of course, Kinda Funny's been using ExpressVPN for quite some time because, of course, ExpressVPN has been good to us, so we like to be good to them. Again, we've been using ExpressVPN back at the office for quite a while, and we will be at the new office when we get in there in 2022. The idea is simple. It just locks out the bad guys, and that's what we all need, right? No more bad guys. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/kindafunny. That's expressvpn.com/kindafunny. And you can get an extra 3 months free at expressvpn.com/kindafunny. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Gamescast Programs Manager for the Games and Online Harassment Hotline, Jalen. Hello, Jay.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much for coming through, and congratulations on 1 year of the Games and Online Harassment Hotline. How's it feel?
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been quite a year, right? I'm sure we'll talk about it more, but launching in August 2020 was it was a moment for sure. And so we've definitely heard so many stories, talked to so many folks, and really grown over this first year. So I'm really excited to talk about it with you today.
And that's the thing, I've known about it since its infancy. I think actually I talked to Anita about it when her and Jen were on a Ubisoft panel back in March, right before everything went to hell with COVID in 2020, right? And it was this thing that was coming. She was all excited about it and telling me about it. For people who don't know, what is the Games and Online Harassment Hotline?
Yeah, so the Games and Online Harassment Hotline is a free, confidential, text message-based emotional support hotline for anyone who makes or plays games.
And that's fantastic, right? I think when I first got pitched, I was like, oh, for developers. And everybody was like, no, it's for everyone. It's anybody in the gaming community, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think that was some of our worry when we first launched, was that we have a very literal name, right? Games and Online Harassment Hotline. And we were worried that folks would think that in order to text us, it has to be something about games or something about online harassment. When really the intention behind all of it was to just provide that culturally specific space for folks in the games spaces. So both in the industry, in like gaming communities, and everything in between, right? Content creators, community moderators, all of that. And we know that, of course, online harassment does kind of show up in its own unique flavor in these spaces. But there are also so many other things that gamers, developers, folks in the community go through. And so, we've really been validated with the really wide kind of range of topics and stories that folks have been calling or texting in about. Really anything from mental health to workplace burnout, to in-game harassment, to more general online harassment. And that's been really, really validating, because that's really what we want to be. We want to be this emotional support resource that provides that kind of culturally specific context, so folks don't have to explain themselves, and just be here for anyone, no matter what they're going through.
So it sounds like a silly question, because obviously a harassment hotline, it makes sense why it would be. The question I think you kind of touched on there is why. Like, were you noticing that other hotlines, other outlets weren't catering to gamers or gaming specific like problems?
Yeah. So that's kind of a two-prong. I have a kind of a two-pronged answer for you. So
Sure.
kind of what you were just speaking on, we had heard from a lot of other like targets of online harassment and survivors of abuse in the industry say things like, when they tried to reach out for help, when they tried to call into other, suicide prevention hotlines or seek help even in therapy, sometimes when the person providing support didn't have that context of the games industry, and also around kind of what it meant to be extremely online. I think the pandemic has shifted a lot of folks' experience around that, but especially pre-pandemic, I think there definitely still was a lot of, of a barrier, a gate between folks understanding, like, oh, why can't you just log off? Or
Sure.
it's just a game. Why don't you play a different game? Or not really understanding that experience of being extremely online and how much online is real life. And so different little context things like that, we found really were barriers to folks getting support. The other part of it is kind of just the timing around this. Online harassment and abuse and toxicity in game spaces has been kind of mainstream knowledge for the past decade at least.
Don't read the
going on
comments,
for-
right? All that stuff.
I
Yeah.
know, right? It's something that, everyone, it's kind of a family secret, like everyone knows about it, but we don't, also feels uncomfortable to talk about. But in 2019, when that kind of first wave of Me Too hit the games industry, all those folks coming forward with their stories about different kind of experiences that they'd had, that really felt like a moment, a shift in the conversation in our communities, and it felt like this was a special time. It was bringing up a lot of things for a lot of people, and that people really needed support now. And folks, we've been watching this happen to people for so long without, and kind of just having to go along without any support. And so we kind of created the resource that we wish that we had, the leadership at Feminist Frequency, including our executive director, Anita Sarkeesian, has had a long history in navigating these waters, in supporting folks through online harassment, and, and other folks who have like experienced abuse and gone through that. So we're pulling on a deep kind of well of knowledge and experience around these things.
Sure.
And it felt like, it just felt like this was something that folks were ready for. Folks were ready to talk about this and ready to kind of seek help and start shifting this culture.
For sure. And I think that's why it's so powerful, right? I think, there's always the whataboutisms, right? And it's always been for so long that, oh man, like if you're getting drug online and you're having it weigh on your emotional thing, it's always that thing of, or it used to be at least, right? Of like, well, yeah, shake it off. Or yeah, that's bad, but it's not like you're being attacked in the street. It's not like this is happening to you in a physical sense, right? And like totally ignoring and invalidating the actual mental weight of that. And I remember carrying that so heavily when I started writing at IGN in 2007, and the boards hated me. And it was like that thing where the seasoned, people who had been there forever, like, oh, just don't worry about it. Don't worry. And you sit there like, but it's not even worrying about it as much as this just sucks. I'm trying to do my job and everybody hates me. Like, why? What do you do with that? Are you, so I think for people who understand the concept of it, what's it like to do it? So of course you always talk about, you text support to 23-36-8, and then someone texts you back, someone calls you. Where's the process go from there?
Yeah, so you can text text support to 23368 any time of day, any day of the week. And you kind of start off with like a really short kind of automated intake. It just asks what name you want to use, and you can use whatever name. You can be as anonymous as you want. And then just a simple question of what's going on. We don't, because confidentiality is so important to us, we don't collect any kind of personal identifying information or demographic information, stuff like that. And then every day we get online from 3 to 7 p.m. Pacific time. So that's when we text you back if you texted us outside of that time, or if you text during that time, we'll just text back right away. And yeah, so during that time, you'll get connected to a live agent. So someone who's really there to like talk with you in real time over text. Yeah, and then from there, conversations can go however you want them to. We really let the person texting in lead the conversation. You only share what you want to. And we're here to listen, make space, provide support, and, help guide, like, I don't know, explore options for what might be helpful, or connect you to resources if that feels relevant to your situation.
Sure. I think that's the biggest thing, right? Like when you're lost at sea in a sea of emotions and dealing with something, right? Like it is so helpful to get someone on the outside who has that mental clarity and isn't entrenched, isn't in the middle of the storm with you, isn't having to weather it. They can talk to you about obviously the resources that are available, whether that be obviously professional help, whether it be a website, whether it be something to that effect, or authorities if that's what's needed, right?
Right. And the reality of online harassment is that there just isn't a one fixed solution. There isn't just a list of things that we can tell you to do to make things better.
Yeah.
Because it's so layered, yes, it is about internet and technology, but it's also about relationships and community. It's about the way people make you feel. It's about how we treat each other. It's about a lot of just underlying kind of things like identity. All of that can be tied into that harassment. And so because it's so layered, what we found is really helpful is actually just having a space to talk about it out loud, to be believed and not dismissed. And we really believe that individuals have, like, you are the person who is most capable of making the best decision for yourself. We don't know what that solution is going to be for you, but we hear again and again people saying, this, like, having this space really helped just like pull me out of a spiral. Or even just like texting this out and getting it out of my brain really helped me articulate some things that I wasn't able to see before. Or I just feel so much more comfortable moving forward now that I've just been able to talk about it. And so I think that human connection is really critical because so much of the experience of harassment can be like that kind of human social experience.
100%. And I do another mental health show over on Cloud9, and one of the things we talked to with the clinician and the psychologist over there was this idea of like, why you can wrestle with something and internalize something and lose sleep over something, but as soon as you talk it out to someone, it feels better immediately, right? And I think it goes back to your very specific and awesome mission, right, of like being in this space, not having to do the legwork of explaining why you're upset in a gaming landscape or what's been going on, to be able to get in there and actually express what's happening to you, and like you just said, type it all out and actually put it into words that you probably aren't putting into words the way you talk to yourself about it, right? But talking to somebody else about it means so much.
Yeah, and especially because a lot of these situations, whether it's abuse in the workplace or like harassment and bullying or toxicity within a gaming community or online harassment in general, a lot of that can often be tied with other kind of axes of power or escalation, or even like we've heard so much about fears of retaliation for
Sure.
speaking out. And so we also really value that the games hotline being this third party, fully confidential, unaffiliated space. None of the stuff that you tell us will ever reach your employer, your friends, your family, none of that. It really is this special space where we're in the community, we're community driven, and we have that understanding. But you can talk to us even if you don't feel like you're ready to tell someone else your story, or you're ready to report, or you're ready to kind of speak more publicly about something that happened to you. And some people might never want to do that, and that's okay too. And we think there should be many different avenues for seeking support and telling your story and being believed.
For sure. So then talk to me a little bit about, not obviously hard numbers, but what has this first year been like in terms of response? Like, was it right out of the gate you were immediately getting all these things, or has it been a slow build? Has it only increased?
Yeah, it definitely the traffic definitely comes in waves and
Sure.
um varies depending on what's going on. A lot of it does respond to events or like things in the world events or things in
Sure.
the news.
Sure.
Like for example, election night in the States was a big one for us. There were a lot of folks
I
feeling.
texted many friends that night to
Yes,
commiserate and worry and be
oh yeah.
vulnerable. I totally understand that.
Definitely. So that's one example. I mean, another one is right now we are busier than ever since the announcement of that Blizzard lawsuit.
Sure.
We are really seeing the lasting kind of ripple effects of folks texting in about stuff like that. And so, yeah, it does kind of come in seasons and waves. And of course, we do kind of have a baseline trickle of folks talking about online harassment stuff, in-game harassment and community stuff, with just a general undercurrent of mental health.
Sure.
Again, we've been talking about harassment a lot, I know, but we also get a lot of texts from folks just telling us about, struggles with depression or anxiety, a real like tension with abusive roommates. Stuff like that. We also get a decent number of conversations, just folks looking for support around that too.
So in year one, right? What's surprised you? Like when you started this whole thing, like, did you expect it to go one way and not have stuff about, we're talking about roommates and these other kind of
Yeah.
dynamics, or like what stood out?
Yeah, I mean, we've touched a little bit about how relational these situations are, and how much harassment is not just mysterious strangers or boogeymen on the
Sure.
internet coming to get you. A lot of times it's your friends. A lot of times it's your community members and stuff like that. So that was definitely something that shifted some of the ways that we thought about harassment and wanted to respond to it.
Wow.
The other thing that really, really surprised me was when folks who had caused harassment or had been accused of abuse in the games industry, or who had been kicked out of a community space for the way that they were treating people, when they started texting us and asking us for emotional support and seeking emotional support with us.
Sure.
Yeah, that just wasn't something we anticipated. And so we took a moment, really looked at it, and thought about, well, what is our mission, and do we want to support these people, and if so, how? And so we started from really grounding ourselves in an acknowledgement that harassment and toxicity happen as an ecosystem, right? It's not bad apples. It's not a boogeyman. It's not someone who is especially evil or anything like that. It happens in these cycles, and it's part of our culture in some ways. It's behavior that we see modeled, and we learn it, and we experience it, and we witness it, and it can show up in our behaviors too, right?
Sure.
So with that understanding, especially as a community resource, when these folks were reaching out to help, we decided that it was important to believe that people could change and that it would matter if they did. Yeah, so from there we kind of we talked to a lot of experts. We I don't know, had a bunch of conversations about like how to hold accountability while also supporting folks through the pain and suffering that they really were experiencing. But doing so in a way that wasn't endorsing their behavior or kind of colluding with them or encouraging them to do it more, and also protecting survivors in the meanwhile. So yeah, that was
That's
definitely
incredible.
a big growth point for us.
Yeah, I would not have expected that. That would have caught me off guard as well. So, you talk about the fact that this isn't a boogeyman. This isn't somebody who's just a bad person. I understand that if you probably had an answer to this question, you'd be a millionaire. But how do you break the cycle? How do you break the cycle of online toxicity?
Yeah. I do wish I had an easy answer for
Right.
you. I mean, because I think the scales have to match, right? So if we know that this problem is kind of a cultural big picture issue, the solution also has to be cultural and big picture. So it's
Sure.
gonna be a long-term process. It's gonna be a journey that someone's going to go on. And at the Games Hotline, we know that we're just one stop on everyone's journey. Anyone who texts us, it's kind of like a single instance conversation. We don't keep like records on folks.
Sure.
Every conversation is kind of a new instance.
You're not following
Um,
up the next week and be like, "Hey, did this work out?" Or
no.
what about this? Yeah.
Yeah, and even if you like some people will text in multiple times, but they might talk to a different person that day, and it's not like we can pull up a file of like, oh,
Sure.
here's what you talked about last time. And so, if we see our role as just kind of one stop on someone's journey, at the hotline, we kind of see ourselves, our kind of obligation in this certain situation is like holding the door open for change. We're not
Sure.
pushing people through, and we're not slamming doors in people's faces. Right? All we feel like all we have to do is hold that door open, right? Let folks feel like they're supported, because I think in order for people to change, they do have to feel supported. If it feels hopeless, if it feels like no one believes in you, if you're a monster, everyone's going to think you're a monster forever anyways. There's not a lot of motivation to change there.
Sure.
And so, as a community resource, we feel like we can offer that in kind of a unique way. So holding that door open for change, offering, validation and space to listen to what they're feeling. Getting called out is hard, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And we can hold space for that, and at the same time, again, not endorsing the behavior that they've done, really putting forth that belief that they can change. It sounds like it matters to you, to do things differently from now on. And I think that's really important,
Sure.
offering that support to them. And then, yeah, kind of the part of breaking cycles is like maybe sometimes redirecting where they seek support from here on out, like directing them away from survivors and directly impacted folks, because sometimes folks can kind of get into a space of like, they blocked me, but I just want to reach out to them again. I want to make them understand that I didn't mean it that way, or why won't they listen to me? I keep trying to get back into this community, but they just won't let me in. Of kind of redirecting that and saying, who else can help you process this? Who else do you have in your life that has been supportive for you during this time? Like maybe take some of those feelings and process them over there, so that it's not kind of repeating those cycles and making those directly impacted folks feel like targeted again.
Sure.
And I think that in itself, even though it's a small intervention, can make a really big difference. Like when folks come and text us about using a racial slur in a game, or they just raged out at someone, and now they're feeling really ashamed of that, or just really embarrassed, and like they can't even look at themselves. When they bring those feelings here, we can make space for that and we can support them. And that means they're not bringing it into another game.
Sure.
You know? So I do think like starting with these kind of lower level interventions, we do this at the hotline, but we hope that it models for, other folks in community as well. Like these are all ways that we can treat each other. And yeah, start breaking those cycles and start shifting that culture. How do we make our spaces feel like that behavior isn't welcome here? That like that's not an acceptable way to treat each other, and not wait for it to get to the really extreme cases of big explosions and violence, and start really at the smaller levels of like objectification, little jokes here and there that might feel sexist or racist, and interrupting kind of at these smaller cuts before we're kind of bleeding out, right?
Sure. Oh yeah, totally. That's what we always talk about here on Kind of Funny, right? Is empathy. You know what I mean? It is that idea. If there are the smaller infractions that don't get called out, then they start to build to that's what this place is. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to do that. And it is so hard to call people out, right? And get called out. Like it is a back and forth where you need to be there, but you always need to be able to say like, okay, cool. Well, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to hurt this person, nor do I want to be hurt. And do I want to let you get away with hurting me or somebody else like that?
Yeah, that kind of brings up something that you actually mentioned at the start when you were talking about like how a lot of the rhetoric around harassment is like grit and like toughen up and
Yeah, right. You have a thick
like, whatever.
skin. You're forged in fire. Yeah.
Right. But the reality is like what we resist persists. And I think that's true for ourselves internally. Any feelings that we're pushing down, they're actually staying with us. They're not going away.
Yeah.
I think that's also true like on a community and cultural basis. Like we've said, toxicity and harassment has been around for a long time. And, I think most people don't feel like it's a good thing. No one's like not a lot of people are pro toxicity, right? But it has kind of become something that we just resist and we just push down of like, okay, well, that's just how it is. Like, it feels like too big of a problem. Like we can't control all of that. Let's just kind of not really talk about it or not think about it and just do our best, and kind of grit through it. Don't ask for help. We're tough. And I think the salve to that is actually practicing these skills, like you were saying, of like, when like it can be hard to bring something up with a friend of like, hey, that thing you did really hurt me or made me feel this kind of way about myself. And the other side, right, receiving that call out, like hearing that you've really hurt someone, maybe that you really care about, or that you really didn't intend to have that effect on, but nonetheless still happened. Really shifting from a conflict avoidant kind of mindset, which is that kind of resisting and defensiveness, into a conflict generative mindset of when this conflict happens, right? What it is really is that you and I have a mismatch, a misalignment in our understanding of things or the way that something came across. And this is an opportunity for us to build a bridge and meet each other and build more understanding and connection between all of our relationships. And I think shifting to that and practicing those skills, practicing those muscles, starting with the lower level stuff will give us the strength to really show up in a meaningful way when those larger explosions do happen.
100% right. It's it's so easy to take the path of least resistance, right? Where something like, I didn't like that, but whatever, I'll let it go. And then on the other side, if you're the person getting called out, what usually happens, right, is you get defensive. It was just a joke, yada yada. You know what I mean? You do that kind of as if that's going to get you out of the situation, or Yeah, right. You're making the other person feel bad for feeling offended or whatever by it, instead of
Mm,
taking that breath, taking a step back, and realizing, of course, well, I do like you. I didn't mean to offend you. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Like that's not what this is about. So let's talk about it. Like you're talking about. It's those
yeah,
little things are misalignments, and then it gets
yeah.
to be a huge thing one day if you don't do anything about it.
Right, exactly. And I hope that's kind of I think that's part of what we are trying to do in our work as the Games Hotline, and our larger hope and dream is that, this makes more space for, asking for help for vulnerability,
For sure.
and that can like kind of spread in our communities and the culture. Because really at the end of the day, it's up to all of us, and all we have is each other.
You talk about that being the bigger picture, the biggest the hope for the games and online harassment hotline. What does year 2 look like? What are your goals there?
Yeah. I mean, even just based on kind of the stuff I shared about year one, one of, I think it can be pretty apparent that like really our main priority is responding to the needs of community. So in terms of, growth and learning and improvement, that really is like we want that to be community driven. So when we really listen to like what folks are texting in about and look at, trends of, for example, there was a while where a lot of folks were texting us about blackmail. Folks like kind
Wow.
of blackmailing them either with intimate pictures or personal information, like, outing them to their family around sexuality or
Sure.
gender, stuff like that. And yeah, there was just a while that we kept getting stuff around that. And we're like, actually, we don't have the best resources around this. We're not really responding in a way that we feel like is the most robust. So we reached out to a bunch of experts again and put together kind of a little guide for our agents to reference when this comes up again. And so that's just a new tool that we added to our toolkit. And so in that way, we're always just kind of listening and responding to what the community wants. And we want that to drive our service because that's what we do, right? That's our most important
Yeah.
thing. Other than that, we do also have like some other big picture goals. They're not super concrete because we want to like really focus on that community driven part, but we would love to have more available hours, right?
Sure.
In this first year, we were actually able to double our open hours. So we went from 15 to 28, so almost double. And we also opened on weekends. We were previously Monday through Friday only, and that seeing that like in how much more accessible that was to folks, it really helped folks get the support that they needed when they needed it. And so we want to keep expanding that. We also want to keep making resources accessible to the public. Like we've been having all this like cool conversation about mental health and accountability and culture and stuff like that. And we talk about that and think about that all the time on the hotline. And we want that knowledge and those resources available, not just to people who text into the hotline, but other people who might never text into the hotline as well. So we're working on developing more resources to share just like with the public for free. And stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of big dreams and ideas on the horizon, but always grounded in making sure that we're serving and responding to the community and the people asking for help.
I love it, Jay. Congratulations on 1 year. This is such a fantastic resource, and I'm glad people are using it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, like I said at the beginning, it really does feel like for a lot of us, the resource that we wish we had 5 years ago, 10
Yeah.
years ago. And so it feels like it's always weird to say like when bad stuff is happening or when harassment happens, like, oh, I'm glad, I'm glad that's happening. Obviously, we're not. Obviously, we hope there's one day where we don't need to exist.
Yeah.
But I am really glad and grateful that we can be here for folks, especially during really tumultuous times in the community, like now, and I'm sure as will happen in the future. So.
Jay, if people want to get some help, where can they contact the hotline?
Yeah, so to get connected with the hotline, you can text us from anywhere in the US, any day, anytime, any day of the week. You just text the word support to 23368, and you'll get in the queue and get connected with a live agent. And again, we're online every day from 3 to 7 p.m. Pacific. So that's when we'll text you back. And then if you want to follow our work and find some of those free resources that I was talking about, you can find us online on social media at Games Hotline on all the little platforms, as well as on our website at gameshotline.org.
Fantastic. Jay, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much for having me. This was such a delight to talk about. And yeah, I really appreciate it.
Anytime. For now, let's get back to the Gamescast. And then we're back, right? That's how it works.
Yeah,
Huh?
exactly.
How are you are you going to be in trouble for how are you going to insert the interview for Patreon kids?
Export 2 versions, one with the ads and one without
Look
the
at
ads.
that! Round of applause for Baron.
Come on,
everybody.
he's a
Come
pro.
on.
He's a pro.
Going overtime over here, and I love it. If that wasn't enough for you about the Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut review, let's talk about 12 minutes. Of course, last week we had Louise on to talk about 12 minutes, a game we premiered kind of, 6 years ago in 2015 on a Let's Play. And then he got money from Xbox, got picked up by Annapurna. Then he got Willem Dafoe, Daisy Ridley, and James McAvoy into this Groundhog Day from hell kind of game. We've all been playing it right now, and so we can finally talk about it. And so Lucy, you had to be so quiet during Ghost. Tell me where you're at with 12 minutes and what you think of it.
I'm like 3-4 hours in, and I still can't tell if I like it or not.
Ooh. Okay.
I think there's a lot of it that I could say like flat out I don't particularly like. I don't particularly enjoy the top down playing on controller. I don't like the way that the inventory
it's a weird
kind of
control
thing
scheme for
works.
sure.
Weird, but like overall, I mean, do you want me to like kind of explain
go
the
for it.
conceit of it?
Please go.
The conceit of it is basically you play as the character voiced by James McAvoy, and you come home one day and you're just trying to have a nice evening with your wife, and then a police officer comes and stuff just like you get caught in a time loop of this like 10-minute section of you coming home, talking to your wife, and then a police officer coming, and I can't, because I haven't really I saw the first trailer of it and I've been kind of like keeping away from it because I was like, I know that I want to play that, so I don't know what so the night turns into a nightmare when a police detective breaks into your home, accuses your wife of murder, and beats you to death. Right? I can say that's in the marketing.
That's the best pitch of it.
I mean, that's the setup of the game.
Nailed it.
That's it. I mean, I'm just reading off the show notes you gave me, but again, I didn't want to like spoil it if that's not out there. But like, that's really interesting. That like central conceit and like why the police officer's there, like what your wife has to do with everything, how it unravels though, is where I'm not particularly enjoying it. And I can't tell if this is a me thing and it's just like my brain doesn't work the way that the game wants my brain to work, but I'm struggling to get through it, and I feel like it's taking me way longer than it should.
Okay.
And I think as well the game is not very good at telling you what it wants you to do.
Sure.
But again, that could be me.
No, I think that's accurate. And I think so like for me, I've beaten it. I had a great time with it. Like my tweet today said, I love it. And like, obviously this shows to talk about that because I say, I love it. It's not without its problems. It is not a perfect 10 game by any stretch of the imagination. There are the limitations of the controls. There are the performances that I think range a bit and then just don't mesh sometimes with what's going on. For words, like I said, spoiler cast on Xcast, second half of that on Saturday. But like, I feel the ending is kind of like not even the ending, I guess the final MacGuffin that leads us into everything. I was kind of like, I thought early on that might be the case, but then I was like, that's ludicrous. But then it becomes real. I'm like, okay, well, that's what's going to happen. However, all that said, this is such a Greg game where I love it's adventure. It's point and click adventuring. It is listening to dialogue and then trying to figure stuff out. It is taking a shot and not having it work out. But then when it does work out, having that serotonin boost of like, oh my God, yes. And then taking that little piece of information you got in that run into the next loop. So you come back and you use that. It changes dialogue options that you can say. Then you get to piggyback off of. You get to spiral out of it. Like once I got my hands on the game, I couldn't stop playing it. Like I liked it that much. Again, I think it's not for everybody. I think there's a lot of problems with it, but I had a hell of a time with it. Blessing.
I really didn't like this game. I rage quit it after getting probably about 3 to 4 hours in. And it's funny because I feel like this should be a Blessing game. You know, I really like point and click adventure games. I really like narrative, but then I also really love puzzles. And I think the game does a bad job at being both a point and click adventure game and also a puzzle game, because the puzzle in this game that you're trying to solve essentially is how to break this loop or how to solve this situation that you're in. And for the puzzle mechanics of it, right? Like for me, what makes a good puzzle is supplying your audience with the tools they need to solve the puzzle and then making it clear, like, all right, like, this leads to this. And so have fun, see if you can figure the thing out. And one of the things I think this game tries to do in order to get around the issue that we have with so many point and click adventure games is that it makes so many of its mechanics interactable. And so like you can take, I think we did this in the previous episode of Gamescast where we played the game on air, where, you can take a mug, you can combine it with the sink, you can put water in it. Cool. You can take a knife, you can do whatever with it. Cool. You can combine things in really interesting ways that nothing feels like a wasted opportunity, if that makes sense. You feel you have a sandbox that you can kind of go crazy with. I think the place where that specifically falters is that it even worsens the adventure game logic of, okay, cool, I'm stuck and I don't know what to do next. I'm going to combine everything with everything and figure out where the fuck I'm supposed to go. And for me, whenever I did figure out what the next step was of a major solution, I never felt like those solutions were good or earned. Like the first few major steps you make in trying to get to the next point of, okay, what is this mystery? How do I get further in this loop? How do I stop this cop from choking me out? Right? Like, how do I stop doing X, Y, and Z thing? By the time I figured out the first one, I was like, all right, cool, I guess. Whatever, I'll roll with this. And by the time I figured out the second major solution in the game, I was like, fuck this. This is bad. Like it was one of those things where I'm like, how are people going to figure this out without a guide or without talking to their friends? I know like enough people reviewed it that I know that so many people did figure a lot of that stuff out. But I do wonder the percentage of people that are going to struggle so hard, because the game throws so much at you in terms of what you can do, that what you need to do really, for me, got lost in there when I think about good puzzle design. And so that I didn't love, but then also the story and writing didn't sit well with me as well, because the game, of course, as a time loop game, is dealing with a lot of repeated actions, and you are doing things as a player. You're going through a lot of dialogue trees over and over again, and doing a lot of the same actions over and over again. And usually I'd be fine with that. This year is an interesting year because we have so many different time loop games. And I'm playing this game right after playing The Forgotten City, which is a time loop game that I absolutely adore. And The Forgotten City, I think that game may have colored a bit of how I view this game and how it handles its time loop, because The Forgotten City takes in measures to soften that flow of repetition in the time loop, where if you do a thing, if you do a major thing in the first loop in The Forgotten City, when you come back in the second loop, there are ways in which you can shortcut that thing that you just did so that it doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Whereas 12 minutes as a puzzle game and as a narrative game, I found myself going down the route of doing the same dialogue trees over and over and over, like 15 times in a row, just hoping that maybe if I ask this person this thing, that a different dialogue option pops up that'll give me the bit of information I'm looking for. And so that stuff really grated on me as well.
And that it's that thing where I think you're right on about everything you're saying, and obviously they're your opinions, but especially for where you're right now, you can skip dialogue you've heard before most of the time, right? Unless you're actually in the scene versus when people are talking, it'll make sense when you play. But you still have to tap the button every time to skip every line. I really expected there to be an option that was, automatically fast forward through anything I've heard before, to make it go quicker and still burn time of the 12 minutes that you have to run every level, right? But not do it that way. So I was surprised that wasn't there. And like to what you're saying, like, some of that dialogue does change in those trees based on what you now know or what you heard from the last thing, and blah, 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 as you run through it that way.
Yeah.
Mike, you've been playing too. Where are you?
Yeah, I'm about Blessing. I didn't cut you off. Did you want to say
No, go for it.
Okay.
I have a lot to say, and we have time.
Yeah,
so
let's go wild.
I'll get back to it.
I'm about 90 minutes in. I've been playing all morning today, and it's actually funny. Listen to you three. There's so many things that I identify with, that I agree with. And it is interesting because I'm having just a good time right now. I want to say this is like the middle of the road for me. It's a good time, but I'm actually riding the high of this thriller, right? This is not a Mike game, a point and click single player game, but I think having it condensed and being in this small time loop / room, I feel more like, okay, I can control this. This isn't going to be some lengthy thing. And I'm riding this high of like, I'm putting pieces of the puzzle together and I'm feeling like, oh, there's that serotonin boost, like Greg just said, right? Of like, I did that, I got that. And then like Lucy and Blessing said, where it's like, why are these mechanics like this? It's going to make me pull my hair out. I don't like this. But now I'm like, I got to do it, right? Like, the steps, Mike, follow that. And so I'm riding this high right now of like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good of where I'm going. I know I get in. I'm like, hey, do this, do that. Pop. And I'm just riding that and I'm liking it because each time, like you said, Greg, of like, I'm finding different ways to either fail or succeed, right? I do this. Oh, that's a fail. Okay, well, now I know how to get to this point. Let's go for that. Okay, I did this. That's a succeed. I like that. And I love it. My heart races every single time the doorbell rings, right? Because I know I got to get to this point and then see what happens next before that doorbell rings. And I think they did a really good job at like that kind of rabbit chasing the carrot, right? I'm looking at the stick and I'm chasing it and here it comes. And so I would say I'm having a good time. There's a lot of pieces where I wish they were better, right? The point and click doesn't feel good on a controller. There's moments where it just doesn't sync up right and it kind of falters. Or if something goes wrong in your head that you thought was going to go right, the whole run essentially is just thrown in the trash. And I hate that, right? But I am having a ton of fun of playing this cat and mouse game with the killer. Where am I going to go next? What's the next step? And man, oh man, I am liking it. So I'm going to say it's a good time for me right now. I'm enjoying it.
Boss baby Barrett Courtney, you actually beat this game before me, and then we sent a flurry of texts to each other about it. What's your review on it? Where are you?
I'm closer to you, Greg. I really loved it. I think I had texted to you at one point. It was really the journey for me of just I tweeted out this morning of like it's like kind of a really fucked up escape room in a really weird way, and like how you deal with mechanics and stuff like that. And I was along for the ride. I will say like the one there's like some things near the end. I don't think it strongly sticks to the landing story wise. And then the other kind of like two downsides that I had were I think it feels terrible on a controller. You know, I'm a pro video game player, so whenever I play on PC, my natural instinct is to play on an Xbox controller. Of course, So I started with an Xbox controller, played for like an hour. Lulu agrees with me in the back. And I was like, oh, no, this feels awful. This feels terrible. So I was like, you know what? I remember we just talked to Luis about this game and talking about like all of the development stuff, even from 6 years ago. I was like, this was kind of originally created for a mouse. So let me just play it that way. And then once I switched over to that, I was like, oh, this is way, way better. Just getting into the mindset of like point and click and stuff like that.
As a quick timeout for you, like I know we talked about it being top down or whatever, but if you're playing on a controller, rather than control the character you are, right, you're controlling this mouse cursor that you move and then hit A and then they go there, and it's like that doesn't sound bad, but like even getting off the elevator, which is the very beginning, I found myself on other runs like going too far and then hitting my like option, my items button that brought everything down. I'm like, no, go a little shorter.
I accidentally stabbed somebody to death because I misclicked using my controller.
Yeah, like having played like other point and click adventure games like on controllers and stuff like this. For some reason, I don't know why this game struggled with controller controls. But yeah, I did not love it. But like I played like Grim Fandango on a PS4 and stuff like that, and none of that has ever felt like super weird. I guess Grim Fandango isn't truly point and click, but other like point and clicks where I was like, oh yeah, this is like, it's definitely weird on a controller, but not like super off-putting. But yeah, this one, like as someone who loves the feeling of a controller, I was like, I need a mouse for this because it does not feel great.
On this topic, I don't understand why they don't just let you control your character with the thumbstick with it not being a point and click thing. I like playing it. It felt like there wasn't anything holding that back because you're not really using the left
it wouldn't break anything in the design. I totally agree with you, Blessing. But then on that, the other kind of downside that I just wanted to get out of the way is that I don't think all three actors are utilized very well. Of course, the main cast here that I think made 12 minutes pop out at E3 a couple of years ago when they re-revealed it was Willem Dafoe plays the cop. James McAvoy plays the husband, and then Daisy Ridley plays the wife. And
one second, Connor writes into patreon.com/kindoffunnygames and says, "Hey there, Gamescast crew. How do you feel the A-list cast for 12 minutes did with their performances in the game? Do you think it worked well with them just doing the voice acting? And which performances stood out to you the most?" Back to you, Barrett.
I think if anything, this game showcases how good James McAvoy and Daisy Ridley are at American accents. Because if you had never, if they had never said that it was those two actors, I bet you no one would have been able to tell. Like the entire time, I'm like, yeah, I can't notice this is James McAvoy. Every once in a while, Daisy Ridley will say like a word where I'm like, yeah, that kind of sounds like her Americanized. But yeah, of course, Willem Dafoe is just Willem Dafoe. So, you know, Willem Dafoe is the standout. As far as the performances themselves, like I think there's some ups and downs depending on different scenarios. And I honestly think just like, you know, I was going on like I beat this game in 2 sessions. I think my Steam clock said 5.2 hours, which you can translate to 5 hours and 12 minutes. And
whoa,
yeah, I was after both of my sessions, I was like explaining and ranting to everything to Alyssa because I needed to like kind of walk through everything that I'd gone through and experienced, and I was explaining the story to her, and she was like, "Yeah, this sounds like a weird story that James McAvoy would absolutely love to be a part of." And so like I would say it's like kind of disappointing with like I don't think they were utilized super well. I do think like watching interviews with them, like it was just like a really cool project that they wanted to be a part of and were really interested in. So on that side, as like seeing that point of view as like an actor, I think it's cool that they decided that they wanted to do this. So it's a weird push and pull of how I feel about the casting here.
I didn't love the performances, but I think that's compounded by just me not liking the dialogue. I feel like a lot of the dialogue, the way that it was written, especially in how it was stitched together in the dialogue trees, made things feel stilted a little bit. Where you would go from asking your wife about like how's your day, and then talking about, oh, there's a crazy killer cop. Like the tone in which you would go from one line of dialogue to the next line of dialogue often didn't match up for me in a way that kind of took back the performances a bit.
I was going to bring up the same thing. It was like some cases where you, depending on what you pick in the dialogue tree first, will give you massive just tonal whiplash. Like there's one conversation you can have with your wife like at the quite early on in the game where you start like haranguing her and like yelling at her about a specific thing, and then the next thing you can go to is like, oh, so why are we having such a special night? Like, oh, I'll get the dessert out and we'll just have a nice dinner. It's just like this whiplash, and that's an issue that I'm really having like the more that I play it. And like I said, it feels like it has a very specific order that it wants you to do, and sometimes I feel like with the dialogue, if you decide to kind of veer outside of what the game wants you to do, you can kind of wreck the experience for yourself, but that's not necessarily on you as the player. That's just how it's set up in the game. Like, it gives you the freedom, but when the player chooses to do it, it kind of ruins the experience and ruins the game doesn't benefit
from that freedom. Yeah, I can see that definitely. Yeah, and like Greg, I totally see of like the arguments of like why people didn't vibe with it. For me personally, like I think the puzzles for me personally were the highlight, except for like one major one I would say near the very end of the game. Because I've definitely got a smooth egg brain when it comes to puzzles. I love puzzles in video games, but I'm definitely not a very smart person when it comes to puzzles, and I feel like I usually need to be handheld with that kind of stuff. And like I knew for the presentation of this game before we got it in our hands, I was like, I definitely want to check this out. It's not a Barrett Courtney game. I will probably have to wait until, you know, the game's out and there's guides to like kind of help me through. And I was impressed with myself that I was able to kind of finish things without talking to anybody really about it who were also playing it until Greg and I were like both rolling credits and talking about some things there. And yeah, like I don't know like what it was of just like maybe the headspace I was in, where it was just like a lot of the solutions I was finding early on were things that like after like kind of every major beat, there was like an obvious like next step of like, okay, like I think this is the next goal. Let me think of like 5 possible solutions. And I don't know like what it was, but like it was usually like my instinct of like that I would go with that would be the solution. And it was a lot of like playing around with things, and sometimes not everything worked, but it was I had a really fun time just like, you know, maybe like searching under this thing, or you know, like doing something like very quickly in the middle of a run, or like, okay, this thing didn't work quite as well, let me just reset the loop and try it just slightly different and stuff like
There's
that.
a bit
was
of luck to
fascinating.
it, right? I feel like that's the thing where it's like I'm with you that a puzzle game I don't necessarily love, and I hate running into that moment and feeling like I've done everything, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And there was one in this game that I would say, I don't know, the first third, where I did something and then it played out, and then something else happened that led to basically an entirely new, not environment, but like the way I think about, like, where you can play in this game and what you can do, an entirely new branch of everything. Yeah. And I was like, if I hadn't accidentally done this other thing, I never in a million years, I never would have thought to make you go do that. And it's the same thing of like, sorry, I don't mean to roll. So there's that, and there's like 3 different examples for me. There's that one. Then there was another one where I had the solution. Greg Miller, had the solution, but my character, the husband in the game, didn't put it together. And it's that thing where I'm like, you have all the information I have. And if I'm able to go, wait a second, he's saying this and I have this and that. And I was like, why? So then I got annoyed that I'm like, how the fuck do I make him understand what I already know? That sucked. And I got there eventually, but it was like, that's not, I don't like that idea.
I understand both of those moments that you're talking about. And it was like that first one that you bring up that I think I know specifically what you're talking about. It was like, I do feel like you just get enough of like the clues of like, all right, let me play around with it in this loop and see like what I can play around with. And then let me, now that I know what it does to my character, let me play around with like how it affects other characters and other items in the room and stuff like that on other loops. And then the second one, I would say, yeah, that definitely was a puzzle that, like, it's like, it's very obvious with like the way there's definitely some disconnect, some moments of like what the puzzle is and where the story is at, that I definitely agree with. And then for me personally, I think there's only one puzzle that I was able to solve with absolute luck, and it's very close to the end, and that was the only one where I was like, all right, I kind of like fell backwards into this solution, and I don't feel satisfied by this, but everything else I was pretty satisfied.
Here's the thing, because I know Blessing's champing at the bit to get on here. I want to let him go, but the one thing I want to propose to you, Barry, that we can tackle either offline or on the Xcast for Spoilercast.
Xcast, baby.
I remember when I asked you a thing of like, well, I beat the game, but this is happening. Did you ever double back to that?
No, and I had a fascinating conversation with the nanobiologist who also played and reviewed the game, and has brought a lot of new light to the way we specifically finished the game, Greg, which I can't.
Well, no, I've gone back since then and done it. I've rolled true credits, I think, on the game, because there is a thing that ends up ends the game, like it does end. Okay, sorry, Blessing, go.
Yeah, well, I wanted to bring up one of the puzzle solutions early on, which may or may not be the same one you guys are talking about. I can't tell, but there's one puzzle in there early on where you have to interact with the thing multiple times in order to realize that it is an element that you can play around with in a bigger way that's going to actually affect your main progression. And the fact that there's a thing in your apartment that you have to like interact with twice to understand that this is a big element of how I can go forward in the story. For me, it was the most frustrating thing, because by the time I actually figured that out, I think either Roger had to tell me, or it was just like hours of me just like fucking around and being like, what is the thing I had to do?
That's the one I know exactly what you're talking about. That's the I think I do. That's the one I stumbled upon, where my wife did something which then primed something, and then that was able to be there as like, but and I think for me, like, that stuff would be, I mean, I would have those as complaints regularly, but it's compounded with the fact that there's so much that you can try out in this game, and so much of it might lead to, okay, I'm about to get there. No, this is a dead end. And for me, that is what got so frustrating over time, is there is so many dialogue options, so many dialogue trees, and oftentimes the dialogue trees don't seem to be all the way consistent in terms of the options that they give you for what you're trying to say or what you want to say. And so that was frustrating as well. But then there are also, I think for me, there are also so many moments in this game that try to go for gritty and dark, and at sometimes like shocking, that for me did not sit well, especially when I'm going through this loop over and over and over again. Because in this game, most loops you're going through in the span of a couple of minutes,
and most of those loops end with somebody getting brutally murdered. And after getting about 2 hours into this game, that's where I had it, where I was like, God, I can't do this anymore. Where like in trying to solve one puzzle, I ended up murdering my wife because I was like, maybe this is the solution. Like I'm interacting with everything in this apartment so much that I was like, maybe I should pick up the knife and murder my wife, and maybe that'll be the thing that will lead to this thing that'll lead to this thing. And the fact that like, I mean, it's so fucked up.
It was
you're fucked up.
Wow, dude.
But like, it was one of those things where I was like, this game is so dark, and these characters are going through so much that I'm kind of like, I'm really actually getting sick of it. By the time I got to about 3 hours in, like 30 loops in, I was like, I'm sick of going through these loops.
And I told you it gets even darker than that.
I would be like, how?
Even more fucked up than that. Blessing.
But that to me also was, oh fuck, I had a thought and I forgot where I was gonna go with it. But yeah, I didn't love that. I didn't love that. I guess it was where I'm coming down with it.
Sure.
I will say, like, you know, like, I was talking to Roger, like, I think at some point last week, and then I was talking to Blessing yesterday about this game, and I was surprised by both of them, like how much lower they were from the experience than Greg and I were, and I kind of had the feeling that, like, this is probably going to be a divisive game at Embargo tomorrow, and lo and behold, it has been, and so I would say at least try it out. You know, I've been indoctrinated into the Xbox ecosystem, so if you got that sweet old Game Pass, I would say at least try it out. You know, like I know for some people, some solutions have been obtuse for egg brains like me. Like I was able to kind of like skate by and find some things and be satisfied by those things. I would say like nothing gets as obtuse as like some of the, like, you know, some other point and click adventure like Grim Fandango that has a lot of like, how was this the solution to get to this next room kind of stuff. Yeah.
See, I thought this is exactly that. I legit was like,
have you played Grim Fandango?
No, but I played like other adventure games
Okay.
that like are obtuse in that way, and this one for me really like stood against the pack. And the thing that I remembered that I was gonna say, because it was brought up by me killing my wife, I feel like there's so much inconsistency in terms of the reactions to the characters and what my character specifically will bring into the next loop. After I killed my wife, that should have been a fucked up thing that my character would have brought into the next loop and would have been dealing with for at least a few loops. I did that, went to the next loop, and it's like it never happened. Like he got over that.
Yeah, it's only getting easier. Yeah, exactly.
It's so easy. But there's so many fucked up things that he sees and he goes through, and by the next loop, it's like it doesn't affect him. And for me, I was like, this. I couldn't take the writing seriously because of it. Like there's so many things like that where I was like, man, you guys are almost there in so many instances, and I love the setup of the game, and I love I like this puzzle set that they have. I like the ingredients that are there, but the way they're put together and the way that I guess the way in which it's executed just did not do it for me.
I would have liked to see some sort of like a commentary. Like I do agree with you there. Like it felt like loops were so separate outside of like specific narrative things that I would have liked to see more of a deep dive of like what certain, because I did a lot of, like, without spoiling anything else, I did a lot of fucked up shit in throughout the entire playthrough, and I would have liked to see more commentary of how that was affecting your character. But
yeah,
for me, I at one point I just accepted it as like, this isn't doing anything deeper. There are things that are shock value that are just for shock value kind of stuff, and I'm enjoying the ride. It's a fun, like I said at the beginning, it's a fun escape room, and it's fucked up, and I was just vibing.
Yeah, and I think for me also, going back to killing my wife, there are other fucked up shit that fucked up things that I did even outside of that. And I think I'm down with shocking, I'm down with unnerving, but for me the game, the writing of the game would have to earn it. And I think that's the main problem for me, is that in those moments the game didn't really earn it. Like, you know, me killing my wife, me doing other random shit and killing, that's not a spoiler, that's just a thing you can do. Those things never felt like they were earned, or never felt like they were handled or addressed in ways that did the story any justice.
Wait until I tell you. So I assume you're not coming back, Blessing. You're not gonna.
I flirt with it because, like, seeing the review embargo and seeing what other people have to say about it, I kind of really want to know what that ending is. At this point, I don't think the ending is going to save it for me. But like I've heard, I've heard your tone right now, and then also what people imply in the reviews and other things. Apparently, like, the ending is fucking buck wild, or at least the second half of the game is buck wild, and I kind of want to know what that's about. And so I might go back for it, go back to it for that.
Luce, do you think you're gonna finish?
Yeah, I want to. I just want to see how it all plays out.
Sure.
But I think now I feel like if I was just playing this by myself, I would have just stopped
peace.
already. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I just don't have the energy, and I'm like, I was thinking about this. I think the character who most represents me in all of film is Will Ferrell's character in Austin Powers as the guy who doesn't like to hear things more than twice. And I've discovered this about myself. I can't listen to the same shit. Like, which is weird. I listen to the same songs over and over again, but when it comes to like dialogue or like questions, I can't be asked the same thing over and over again. And so with Time Loop, my most anticipated game of the year, but I know that they're doing like you carry all your knowledge over across each loop, so everything is going to be different. But with this one, it's like your actions are exactly the same, the dialogue is exactly the same, or at least in each loop until you like perfect it. That I'm gonna probably just boot up a guide and like give it a few cracks, give it a few runs, and if I don't feel like I'm gelling with the answer, I will probably just get the guide and move on. One thing I will say that we haven't really addressed yet, we haven't mentioned like there is some fucked up shit in it. It's like there is no real content warning on like what is in that game, and I don't know if there's gonna be like a page on does the dog die about it, but it's like I feel like a lot of people are gonna boot up that game and not really realize just how much violence against women there is.
Yeah, there's a lot of
I was quite taken aback by it, and it's like I consume a lot of violent media, but it did kind of surprise me a little bit.
I'm honestly, this is one of the few times while playing a game where like I felt like I personally could have used the content warning. Like usually that kind of stuff when it comes to violence and that kind of content, I'm pretty easygoing with it. Like I stomach that stuff really well. And again, like by the time I hit the 3-hour mark, it stressed me out. Like I had to put the game down, and like I'm now that I know what's awaiting me, I'm gonna go back to I'm considering going back to it. We'll see if I actually commit to it, but I'm right there with you that I think for sure with some of the stuff that's in that game, it could have used that for sure.
Yeah, that's obviously I've seen that going around Twitter and in the spaces today or whatever. People talking about that, and especially on the heels of Boyfriend Dungeon, right?
Yeah.
Their whole that they didn't they wanted better. I'm trying to spoil that game. People wanted more content warnings on that, and I think that's where it gets interesting with this, where I think again, for 6 years, right? Not that I talked about it every day and every month or anything like that, but I remember in that initial demo talking about the knife on the table and him be like, well, you could kill your wife or whatever. And then also the fact that, even if you're just talking about violence in general, right? Like the way the cop manhandles her, throws her to the ground and stuff like that. Like
the way
I
the
knew
cop
that was there. I knew
you.
that. Yeah. And so I think it's, so many people have been jumping in, not expecting that in the same way that, it's got an M rated, it's rated M for mature, sure. But this is pushing it in a way you don't necessarily see games do all the time, right? And when they do, it's usually a big deal. Whereas you saw something like Last of Us Part 2, right? Like how much that got from that, cinematic that dropped right at Gamescom that 1 year of the arm getting broken with the hammer and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see, if what Annapurna and Louise do going forward, if you want to do that. And then obviously even to, I think again, where it gets more fucked up, because it gets more fucked up, to even like give you a warning for that, I think might then tip the hand of what's happening in it. And then you get into this push and pull of like, well, a rated R movie doesn't give you a trigger warning, content warning for what's going to happen. But that's also in terms of where the art forms are at, I think it comes in with a different expectation, right? You see a trailer and you know how fucked up that's going to be. Whereas this, if you watch the trailer for this, you might just think, it's a time loop game. It's Groundhog Day or whatever, let alone that I saw somebody make an interesting point too, that it's on Game Pass, right? So it's like available for way more people than would normally be getting their ticket punched to go get this. So it'll be an interesting ongoing conversation, I'm sure. But I think I went around the horn. Everybody had something to say about it. Yeah. But again, Xcast Friday. Oh yeah, Mike, are you going to finish it? You're going to get ready for Xcast?
Yeah, okay. I've done a good job of biting my tongue because, Blessing has talked about stabbing his wife. Lucy talked about those intense moments. And, I've done some wacky things that I really look forward to having this conversation about in the middle of this, where like it's gone from just wild and wacky where I'm laughing out loud. Like, what am I doing, Mike? To like you guys just brought up of like, oh snap, this is some real stuff going on in front of me. This is crazy. So I really look forward to us on Friday once, I'm going to complete this and Khalif comes on and Baird and you, and like just putting it all out on the table and talking about this. Cause there's a lot of moments here that I've done a good job of trying not to talk about because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who's listening right now. And I look forward to just going wild on Friday so we can have this conversation.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you'll join us this Friday and into a public Friday, patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, everybody, youtube.com/kindoffunnygames on Saturday, podcast services around the globe. This has been another episode of the Kind of Funny Gamescast. It's not over, of course. We're going to do the Patreon post show over on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, where you can write in to be part of the show. You can get the show ad free. You can be a producer. You can usually watch it live when there's not some kind of crazy embargo and everything else. Lucy, James, thank you so much for staying up with us and hanging out with us. Where can people keep up with you?
Thank you for having me. I miss you all. I'm on Twitter, Lucy James Games. I'm doing GameSpot After Dark is up on Friday, our podcast, and then the Very Online Show over on Giant Bomb, I think is up on Thursdays. Yeah, Thursdays. And well, it's because we record it at like a weird amount of time beforehand, so I'm never sure when it's up, but I think it's Thursdays. It is Thursdays, and then I was on Bombcast on Tuesday. If you want to go back and listen, introducing the Americans to chip butties. So,
is that French fry sandwich I saw somebody screen cap or whatever?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's not French fries; it's a chip, proper chip sandwich, mate.
SnowBikeMike, you know, over there they call French fries chips. It's weird.
I'm picking up the vibe. I'm picking up the vibe.
They call potato. They call crisps are potato chips.
Then what are potato chips? Wait, the crisp or potato? Wait, okay. I see.
Potato chips. We don't say potato chips.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got a post show to do, but if you're not joining us on patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.